Well, Facebook is caught up in another privacy scandal. The New York Times reported the company gave access to your personal information to big businesses, including Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, and the Royal Bank of Canada. So Facebook has dealt with a series of data and privacy scandals this year. You may remember that back in March, there were revelations about the Donald Trump connection data firm Cambridge Analytica. It was discovered that the firm was obtaining the data of millions of Facebook users. And in July, the social media giant experienced the greatest single-day loss of any public stock. Facebook lost more than $119 billion in market valuation following an earnings call with investors. And just last month, the New York Times published an expose outlining alleged tactics Facebook used to discredit its critics and downplay problems at the company. So there's a bit of a timeline. And for more on Facebook, let's bring in our tech panel, Huda Idris, who is the founder and CEO of .Health, a Toronto health tech startup, and the former chief product officer at Wealthsimple. And she joins us right here in studio in Toronto. And also we've got Tessa Sproul, and she is a former director of digital content at CBC and founder and CEO of Bubble, a media tech company that helps publishers use artificial intelligence to distribute content. All right, so hello to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
And we've been discussing Facebook to start off with. How bad has this year been for Facebook? Huda, let's start with you.
It's just awful. It's as if it couldn't get any worse, right? And right then they come around with new revelations and allegations. I'm a little bit tired of like objective third parties or media organizations finding out things. You would think an organization such as Facebook that's gone through a pretty troubling year and a few would know to basically come up and say what it is on their own to try and build trust. Not so much.
And what do you think, Tessa? Do you think that there should be more accountability with Facebook, given the news that we're getting out of it now?
Absolutely. It's the world's largest publisher. It has the most influence into the hearts and minds of people, Canadians, democracies around the world have been looking very closely at how their elections have been influenced through Facebook, by nefarious players. There's all sorts of privacy questions that folks are asking now. It's quite a cataclysmic year for the organization, and I'm happy to see a lens turned on it. But yes, I'm tired of it too.
So now, according to Facebook, the site has over 1 billion daily users, active users. A lot of people, given, as you've been saying, both of you have been saying, this has been a very troubling year for the social media giant. So a lot of users, and I can say anecdotally too, I've seen some friends saying, hey, I'm getting off of Facebook, here's my email address. Do you think this is going to drive people away from using this platform? Huda, I'll start with you.
We've seen the number of Facebook users on mobile decrease. So a lot of people in North America, for example, have been removing the app from their phones. But we have to remember that Facebook alone, the app alone, isn't the only sphere of influence that this company has. Instagram, which has only been increasing in the number of people that use it, is a very important part of Facebook. And like Tessa said, is a big part of a cultural influence in our communities. So when we think about, you know, which platforms we can quit, there's an extent to which people can just start quitting all of these different solutions. And I think we actually need to start following the money. Who are all these companies that are actually accessing all this information, instead of putting all the onus on users to say, well, don't use it?
That's a good point to make. And so to that point, then, do you think there should be greater regulation of Facebook itself, Tessa?
Absolutely. I mean, I said it's the world's largest publisher. It is. There's all kinds of regulation that regulate organizations such as this and other media organizations. The company has, up to this point, defied whether or not it's a media organization. I think at this point, people are saying, yes, you are. So enacting the existing laws that we do have over things like advertising, elections, that kind of thing, hate speech, all of those things, and making sure that it adheres to our existing laws, but then also diving deeper and figuring out, are there other regulations that we should be looking at that govern organizations, not just Facebook, but other organizations, the big tech companies that do have, some would say, outdated or over influence over how we actually live our lives. Now some people are arguing, are like utilities. So should we be looking at them with the same regulatory eye as we would our power sources.
Right, because it has so much power. Social media does, Facebook does, and it's connected to Instagram. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's the same company, because a lot of people have been saying, oh, I'm getting off of Facebook, but my Instagram is still going. And well, it's the same people behind these companies. So just a word of warning for our users and for our viewers who might be thinking about that. We were talking before, and I want both of your takes on this. Mark Zuckerberg, a lot of times when it comes to a bad reputation for a company, the CEO steps down. They need to do an overhaul. What do you think, Huda? Does Mark Zuckerberg need to go?
I think Zuckerberg is a brilliant business person, right? What he's done is he's given himself a lot of power. Throughout all the rounds of investing, typically a founder would get heavily diluted. But what he's done is he's given himself more power while raising more money for his company. So it might be almost impossible to get rid of him. Whereas it would have been really easy, and it did happen for Uber with Travis Kalanick, it's not so easy with Zuckerberg. I think investors recognize that, even though when he started it, he was just a kid in a college dorm room, he's built this company into a behemoth. And on some level, they fear that if we remove Mark or Sheryl Sandberg from leadership, it's going to mean the downfall of Facebook.
What do you think, Tessa?
The guy has lost, personally, $20 billion, I think, this year, in and around there. So I think he's probably having a personal reckoning himself. It would be interesting to see over the next few months whether or not he bolsters his senior executive team with more folks that aren't necessarily looking towards the attention economy and the advertising model as the revenue source for everything that the company has become. So I think it will be interesting to see if he brings other folks on board. As you mentioned, it's going to be really difficult to get him out of the organization because he is the majority shareholder of his own company.
And taking that look ahead, very finally, I want to ask you both, what do we see in 2019 for social media platforms like Facebook? Do we anticipate that there will be greater regulation given the sort of pitfalls we've seen during 2018, 2017 as well? Will we see a shuffling of executives? What do you expect? User downfall? Huda, you, and then we'll go to you, Tessa.
I think there will be two things that happen. One, people will start recognizing that these companies, there's very few of them that control a lot of power, and that it's effectively a monopoly. And we're going to start seeing users distribute themselves into different communities and cliques and different parts of the internet. I think on the other end, it's almost like technology has surpassed the government and policy angle, and there's a lot of misalignment. I think we're actually going to see technology take a step back. Even though we've made a lot of discoveries, what we're going to see is companies stepping back and saying, hey, these are regulations from the government, international or local, that we need to be able to comply with in order to effectively run our businesses. And again, I should add that governments are imperfect, and so some of those policies will be positive for these tech companies, and some of these might actually be negative for the broader communities.
What do you think, Tessa? 2019, what will it bring?
Definitely more regulation around these organizations. We have a few select companies that largely control what a lot of folks understand about the world around them, particularly when we're looking at a media context. I think what we're going to see is further regulation, and we've already seen the awakening of political folks saying, wait, hold on, what's happening? It seemed like for a little while they were standoff, and they're saying, no, it's the internet, we won't regulate that, But I feel that now suddenly there's a reckoning partially driven by consumers, folks that are watching from home now, realizing, oh my gosh, this is actually having undue influence over me in ways that, from the design of the addictive design of the apps and the devices themselves, full gamut to elections being potentially won and lost through these big beasts that have one or two people in control of them. So I think we're, up until this point in the car industry, there were no seatbelts, there were no airbags. We're talking about an industry that's less than 20 years old, really, when you look at it. So I think now is the time that people are starting to realize, oh my goodness, this is real. These are having real impact on people's lives. So let's figure out how do we actually make sure that in a good way they're having impact.
So we'll have to see whether or not the 2019 resolution for users is to quit Facebook. I know a lot of people are thinking about that, but we'll see what the impact is. But let's pause this conversation right now. And when we come back, we'll talk about gender diversity in the tech industry. Stay with us.